Hi guys, today we're going to be doing a War by Sail example game set in the Second Anglo-Dutch War. It is about 800 points. In the English fleet we have 2 4th rates and a 3rd rate, and the Dutch have a heavy 3rd rate, heavy 4th rate and a 5th rate. So let's get into the game. First step is to roll for deployment. The English can have the red dice and the Dutch will be the blue one, so both sides roll off. The English get a 3, the Dutch get a 5. So the Dutch have won the deployment roll. They can choose to either deploy their ships and the wind, and then let the enemy deploy afterwards, or force the enemy to deploy first. So in this case, I think the Dutch are going to deploy first and deploy the wind. The wind can be set on either of the 4 directions coming from one table edge, and you can choose either of those, whichever you want to do. Each fleet also has chosen a flagship, so in the Dutch case it'll be the heavy 3rd rate. Got a flagship marker there, and the English have their 3rd rate with a flagship marker as well. So the Dutch are going to deploy, we'll put the wind coming from this direction, and the Dutch can deploy up to 12 inches from that table edge. I'm playing on quite a small table here. This is 2 foot by 4 foot, although not all of the 4 foot is in the camera. So the Dutch will deploy, they can deploy anywhere within this 12-inch line, and so they can deploy something like this as in a line or something. It's worth looking at your speeds when you deploy, because if you have a slow ship behind, he might run into the front ships if you have a faster ship behind. So in this case, my 5th rate goes 7 inches speed, and these two have a 6-inch speed. So it might be better either starting my 5th rate with reduced sail, which will mean it'll go half speed, or putting him in front or off to the side somewhere. So I might just put him off to the side. I'll do something like this. I'll have these two here, and this 5th rate kind of well off to the side down there. So that's my deployment. I'm easily within 12 inches, no problem there. Now the English will deploy. They deploy anywhere on the table, but not within 18 inches of one of my ships. So we're going to have to be going upwind. We could deploy going downwind, but it would mean we wouldn't actually meet them until much further away. So we'll probably deploy heading upwind. So 18 inches. We'll have our 3rd rate flagship there, and our 4th rate there, and 2nd, 4th rate at the back there, like so. I could even deploy a bit more in a line like that. This is quite a small table for this battle. Just for this example, I just do a small table, as opposed to setting up the full 6x4 table. Okay, so that is our deployment. We'll just check the speeds of the English ships, just to make sure they don't run into each other. We have a 3rd rate. You can see I have the quick reference sheets here. This is just using the generic ships, and it also has a list of the weapons at the top here. And you can see we have a 3rd rate, which has a speed of 5, and 2 4th rates, which have a speed of 6. So they're a bit faster, so we might want to deploy those at the front and have our flagship at the back. That might be a good idea. And that way they can speed on ahead. The other option is to deploy them at reduced sail, which you can do. Okay, first turn. The first step of any turn is the sail phase. And we use this handy marker, the wind and turn aid. It has 2 sides. There's a standard side, and there's the unweatherly side, which has a much larger in irons section. So all you do to use this is put the ship directly in the center, with the mainmast right in the center. It probably looks a bit off where you are due to parallax error. And then you draw a line directly from the bow of the ship through the wind and turn aid, and that'll give you a reading as to you must line this direction here, the wind, must line that up with the wind direction. So in this case it'll be like this, and you can see that that ship is reaching, which is a standard move. You can see here we have standard move reaching, running is 3/4 move, reaching again, close hold is half move, and in irons has its own rules depending on how long you stay in irons. So who does this sail move first? It's always the fleet with the best quality. So in this case the Dutch have a 2+ crew rating, and the English have a 3+ crew rating, which is slightly worse. So the Dutch need a 2 or higher on a d6 to succeed a crew check, while the English need a 3 or higher. So they're slightly worse sailors and slightly slower to reload, but not by much. So because the Dutch have the higher higher crew rating, they're going to move first. So all these ships are reaching, we can see, just by using the turn aid, wind and turn aid. So they'll go their standard move. So heavy third rate is going to go 6 inches. It goes directly forwards. You don't have any control over this. It's a directly forward movement. And then our heavy fourth rate goes 6 as well. And the fifth rate goes 7. So it goes to there. And now the English will do their sail moves. Looking at the wind and turn aid, they're all close hold. So they'll be doing half moves. So fourth rate goes 3 inches to there. Both fourth rates go 3. And the third rate, they all had the same speed. Okay, I see. I must have looked at the fifth. Oh no, sorry, I'm looking at the. Here we go. I was looking at the Dutch sheet for a second there. Third rate goes 5. So 5 divided by 2 is 5 divided in half is 2.5, and we round that down to the nearest inch. So we just go 2 inches there. Okay, that's our sail moves. Next we have the activation phase. We roll 1 dice for each of the ships on each side. So in the Dutch will roll 3 dice. They need a 2 or higher, which is their crew rating. And you can see they got all their activations successfully. So they'll put 3 dice just on the activation sheet here in the Dutch section. And that's how many ships they can activate. The English will do the same. They have 3 ships, so they roll 3 dice, and they need a 3 or higher. Okay, now 2 of these have failed, but because any ships within 12 inches of the flagship, within 12 inches of the flagship, 1 ship can re-roll. So they're all within 12 inches, so we can re-roll 1 of these, no problem. So we get 2 to activate. Okay, now for activation phase. The fleet with the highest crew rating gets to go first. So they can take 1 of their dice from the activation sheet, and they can activate any of their ships with it. It doesn't matter which ship generated the activation, you can use it for any ship. Unless it's a smaller ship, like a structure rating 2 or lower, in which case we have a separate section. Structure rating 2 ships can only activate other structure rating 2 ships. Otherwise you could take lots of small ships in order to get lots of activation. So in this case, all our ships are larger than structure rating 2. We don't have to worry about small ships. So I can choose any of these ships I want as the Dutch to try to attack here. Or I can do whatever I like, really. I have a lot of options, various sail actions and combat actions I can take, and I can choose any of these ships. So because we're starting to get kind of close to the British here, we're not quite within close range. We're at about 12 inches away. So we could turn and attack. If I was to turn this way and broadside, it would put me almost going off the edge of the table next turn, so I don't quite want to do that. In a larger table, you'd have a lot more space to maneuver. But just for this example game, I think I'm going to turn the other way. I have quite a lot of maneuverability with these Dutch ships. You can see that's a heavy third rate. I have a maneuver rating of 3, which means I can... I'll show you how that works. So I'm going to make a turn. When I activate a ship, I'll put this dice next to it. I have a sail action and a combat action I can make. And the combat action can be swapped for another sail action if you want to. So for my sail action, I'm going to make a turn. When I make a turn, you can see these black points around the outside of this wind turn aid. You line one of those up with the mainmast, and then you turn around the outside. As you turn, passing each black point is 1 point of maneuver rating. So I have 3 maneuver rating. I can go 1, 2, 3 as a maximum. I can stop any time before any of those if I want to. And often you'll have to do partial turns to line up targets. So I can go 1, 2, and that would be as far as I could turn to there. But that's actually okay. That lines me up pretty well with a broadside against this ship. So that's my sail action. And now I'm going to do a combat action, which is firing a salvo from my starboard broadside field of fire. So I'll put a little fired marker there. Got a bunch of these. And when you're checking line of sight, you use a straight edge or a laser or whatever you can find, a ruler, and this is the field of fire. It's a straight line coming from the base of the ship like that. And you can see the target ship is more than half covered, which is good, so it's going to be a full broadside. If this ship was covering less than half of this field of fire, the attack would be made at reduced strength, which means you're firing about half the amount of guns as you normally would. Okay, so let's fire the salvo. We check the range. It's beyond 6 inches, but it's within 12, so it's within the 6 to 12 inch range, which means all the guns will be hitting on a 4+, a 4 or higher. So we look at our ship. It's a heavy third rate. We look at the guns. We have 12 18-pounder Drakes. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll for each of these to hit and then inflict damage. So I'll just start with that. We have 12 18-pounder Drakes. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Roll 12 dice. We need 4 or higher to hit. So I'll remove any low ones. And then to inflict damage with a 18-pounder Drake. You can see here, 18-pounder Drake. I need a 2 or higher to inflict damage. It has plenty of range for this kind of attack, and so I need a 2 or higher. Now when you roll damage, keep an eye out. If you roll 3 6s, the target ship is set on fire. So I ignore the 1s because I need a 2 or higher, and so I've got 4 damage, 4 of them inflicting damage. Each one inflicts 1 damage point. You can see here, damage points 1. 18-pounder Drake, 2+ to inflict damage, and 1 damage point. So that's 4 damage points. And I just keep track of that with little dice. Now we do the next type of gun, 12 12-pounder Drakes. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Roll to hit. 4s to hit. And the 12-pounder Drake inflicts damage on a 3+, so 3 or higher. So they all inflict damage. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more. Got a little 5 next to it. Then I've got 6 6-pounders. They hit on a 4. And inflict damage on a 4 or higher. So that's 2 more. I take us up to 6, and it's up to 5. 11 points of damage so far. And then I get 2 3-pounders, which have a 10-inch range, so they're still in range. Need 4s to hit, and then they have a 5 or higher to inflict damage. So they're able to. Okay, so that's 12 points of damage. Now what we do is we have a look at the damage table. So I inflicted 12 points of damage. I cross-reference with the ship's structure rating. In this case, it's a 4th rate, which has a structure rating of 3. So 12 on a structure rating 3 inflicts 1 crew and 1 crew casualties and 1 sail damage. So I've got my damage markers here. 1 crew casualties and 1 sail damage. Now when you inflict crew casualties, you immediately have a morale check. So now that the salvo is finished, I'll take these. We don't need to worry about this tracking damage anymore. All we need to worry about is the damage markers that have been applied. So I've taken crew casualties. I roll 1 dice for each point of structure rating, in this case 3. And I need to, each one of these is a crew check. So I need to succeed a crew check of 3 or higher. And what I need to do is I need to get equal to or above the number of crew casualty markers I have. So at least one of these needs to be a 3+. Okay, so I managed to succeed. I got a 3+, so he's fine. We don't have to worry about morale anymore there. Okay, so that's the ship's activation. Next up, we'll do the English. So we alternate ship by ship, with the highest quality fleet going first. So next up, it'll be the English. They can choose any of their ships to activate. In this case, they're probably going to, let's see, might activate this 4th rate and turn slightly. He's got a maneuver rating of 2, so he can easily turn to there, and he'll be able to broadside this heavy 3rd rate. Return fire. Let's check our arc of fire. Okay, so what's happened is he's not quite within the it's not quite half covered the target. You can see if I put this at halfway, the target is less than half of that field of fire. And because he had heaps of maneuver and I only turned a little bit, it's easy just to say, okay, well I meant to turn and line it up. As long as you weren't at the limit of your turn, it's fair game to say, well look, I wanted to line it up perfectly, and so here we go. It's quite a precise game with these angles, so it's no worries. Especially if you're just learning the rules, it's not a problem if you need to adjust things slightly to get the attack you want. Okay, so this 4th rate is going to make his attack. We'll put a fired marker here. All the guns start the game ready to fire. They don't need to reload or anything, but later on, if they'll need to reload if they have this marker on that position. And each position has the guns ready to load at the start, ready to fire at the start, and so each position can have a fire marker on it if it does fire. Okay, what have we got here? Fourth rate, let's have a look. Fourth rate has 10 Culver and Drake, 9 Demi Culver and Drake, and 3 Seeker. So we'll start firing those. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Culver and Drakes, still 4s to hit. We're not quite within 6 inches yet. Culver and Drake inflicts damage on a 2 or higher. And so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points of damage. Then we have 9 Demi Culver and Drake. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. 4s to hit. That was our activation dice. And Demi Culver and Drake, damage on a 3 or higher. So it's 3 more points. 1 takes it to 6, and 2 more. Then we have 3 Seeker. 2 hits, and 4s or more to inflict damage with the Seeker. So 1 more. So that's 9 points of damage against a Dutch heavy third rate, which has 4 structure rating. So let's cross-reference our damage table. 9 points of damage, structure rating 4, 1 sail damage. So just hit the sails. Now that will cause the ship to become unweatherly. So we'll have to use the slightly worse side of the wind and turn aid. If the ship was already unweatherly, it would lose 1 point of maneuver rating. So we can remove this marker here. Now we have our next activation. So we've gone Dutch, English, then it'll be the Dutch again. They can activate one of these guys. 5th rate down here. I think we'll... Next turn, if we don't move him, these ships are probably going to collide. Because they're going towards each other. So we want to avoid that. Maybe turn this way. I don't think we'll quite be able to get an attack in. We might just go close and see if we can stern rake some of them from behind. Could be a plan. They're going to move slightly up here, so I want to kind of think ahead where I want to be. And that should be okay. We'll move him to there. I could fire my bow chasers at the English ship there. Let's have a look. Bow chasers is the same, just a straight line coming from the bow forwards. So yeah, I could do that. I might as well. Small 5th rate. Let's have a look. 5th rate. Yeah, it's got a few bow chasers, so yeah, we'll give it a shot. We're within 12 inches, so we fire our bow chasers. We've got a little fired marker here, coming from the bow, like that. And I have just a 5th rate, Dutch 5th rate, so I have 2 12-pounders, hang on 4s, neither of them hit, and 2 6-pounders. 1 hits. I need a 4 or higher, so I did inflict 1 point of damage, but because the target is a quite large ship, it's an English 3rd rate, which has structure rating 4. You can see here 1 point, structure rating 4, no effect, so it does nothing. Okay, next up it'll be the British activation, or English activation, I'd say. They'll take their last remaining activation, and they'll probably use this 4th rate to attack this 5th rate, I think. We'll turn slightly to there and do a broadside. So this is the bonus of having a line ahead formation. You can kind of attack multiple targets with ships in one turn. And let's see what kind of... Yeah, we can be easily a full broadside. The range is within 12. And it's another 4th rate there, so exactly the same as the other ship we attacked with. 4th rate, 10 Culver and Drake. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Need 4s to hit. And 2s to inflict damage. So 2 points of damage. And then we have 9 Demi Culver and Drake. 4s to hit. That's pretty good. And 3s to inflict damage. And keep an eye out for triple 6s. I almost got 3 6s there, which would set him on fire, but not quite. So keep an eye. This only occurs when you're rolling for damage. That you might set them on fire. Doesn't matter if you roll triple 6s during a to hit roll or reloading or any of those. So we got 5 more points of damage. And finally we have 3 Seeker. 1 hits and 4 to inflict damage, so we inflict 8 points of damage in total. So the Dutch is a 5th rate, Dutch ship 5th rate, which has structure rating 3. We've done 8 points of damage, structure rating 3, 1 sail damage. Now the English could choose to fire on the down roll. You do have to specify before you make your salvo whether you want to fire on the down roll or not. If you fire on the down roll, all sail damage will instead be counted as structural damage. And you can do the opposite as well. You can fire on the up roll. So as the ship rolls up and down, you can choose where you want to fire. If you fire on the up roll, all structural damage will be counted as sail instead. So you can choose whether you want to kind of try and go for the sails and rigging to slow them down, or just try to hold the ship and sink it. And generally the English would fire on the down roll. But because they've already done some sail damage, it might be an idea just to keep at it like that. And if they can immobilize these ships, they'll have a much better advantage. You can also declare at the start of the game, I'm firing all my shots on the down roll, or all on the up roll if you want to. And that way you don't have to worry about remembering it. And generally the English would fire on the down roll, while the French would fire on the up roll. Not that there's any French here, but yeah. In this case, I'm just going to take the damage table results that I get. That can also be very good, because it can take more damage to sink a ship, while dismasting it can be easier. Okay, so the English have activated. Now we'll do the last Dutch activation. You can see that's the last dice from their activation sheet. We have the heavy 4th rate back here. So just thinking about where things are going to go next turn. He'll be going there. This heavy 3rd rate will be there. I think if I just turn a little bit this way, that'll put me in an okay position. They're going to be going that way. I'll come to there, and then maybe I can turn and attack from there. Okay, so that's all the Dutch activation. He's not attacking or anything. So because the English can't activate the ship, they can't do a full activation, but they can still do a sail action. Even if you don't have the activation, you can still do a sail action, which means you could turn or drop anchor or any of those kind of things. And that allows you to keep navigating and turning, even if you couldn't activate and make an attack with the ship. So they can make a turn if they want to. I don't think they really need to, though. All these ships will be going forwards, so I think that's fine. We'll stay in a line formation for now. So that's the end of the turn. If we were within 1 inch of each other, like quite close range, we would do the boarding, grappling, and anti-personnel fire phases. But we don't need to worry about that at the moment. No ships are sinking or anything, so we don't need to worry about that either. So all we do is we go into turn 2. So, sail moves. You can choose which order you want to do your sail moves in. So we're probably going to do this one first. He has got sail damage, so we use the unweatherly side. It doesn't really matter, considering he's running downwind. So running, 3/4 move. 5th rate goes 7 inches. So he should go 4 inches, I believe. Round down. This 3rd rate here, heavy 3rd rate, is also reaching, only just. You can see the line just goes into the reaching area, and so he will go his full movement, which is 6. To there. This heavy 4th rate is also reaching, so he'll go 6 inches as well. Now for the English moves, English sail moves, we have our 4th rate here, who also uses the unweatherly side of the wind and turn aid. The 4th rate goes 7 inches. Yes, 7, while the 3rd rate goes 5. So if I just get in here, he is actually just close hauled. So he'll go 3 inches. While this one here is, I use the other side because it's not damaged or anything. He's definitely close hauled, so he goes 3 inches. 7 divided by 2, and just round down, so it becomes 3 inches. The flagship is also close hold, so he's just going to go 2 inches directly forwards. Now turn 2, we roll for activation. Doesn't matter who rolls, you both roll at the same time usually. You can see all my Dutch ships are within range of the flagship, so they'll all get, so one of them will get a reroll. If you had a ship more than 12 inches away, you should roll for him separately because he won't be able to reroll. So we need 2s or higher for our Dutch. They all activate. The British, or English I should say, they get all of them except 1. They get a reroll. So this turn they're all activating as well. Okay, and the fired markers will stay there until you do a dedicated reload. which is a combat action. So you'd have to, instead of attacking, you'd just reload everything. They can choose to do that if they want to. Okay, so Dutch go first, because they have the highest crew quality. What are they going to do here? Let's see. We have a heavy 4th rate up there. I think we're going to turn and maybe try and attack that 4th rate as well. Focusing fire in this game is a very good idea, because it can take a long time to wear down these ships. So I'm going to turn. I can go 1, 2, I can go up to 3, so I can go just past the second maneuver mark there. And that should give me a pretty good broadside on that hit 4th rate. Yep, very good. This ship hasn't fired yet, so I'll put down a fired marker. Heavy 4th rate. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, let's see what we got. 4 18-pounder Drakes. Now let's check the range. I'm within 6 inches, so we now hit on 3s. 3s to hit, they all hit. 18-pounder Drakes inflict damage on a 2+. So they all inflict damage, that's 4 points. Heavy 4th rate. Then we have 7 12-pounder Drakes. 2, 4, 6, 7. Hitting on 3s. They all hit. 12-pounder Drakes inflict damage on a 3+. And keep an eye out for 666s, which we didn't quite get. So that's 4 more. All these guns inflicting 1 point of damage each when they do cause damage. And then 7 6-pounders. 3, 5, 6, 7. Hitting on 3s. And inflicting damage on a 4+. So that's 2 more. So I inflict 10 points of damage. It is the 4th rate. 10 points of damage on a structure rating 3. 10 points, structure rating 3. That's 1 structural damage. So we give them the structural damage marker. Once a ship takes enough structural damage to equal its structure rating, it becomes stricken. So he's structure rating 3. If he takes 3 structural damage, he's stricken, which means he's starting to sink. He moves a lot slower. He has trouble doing certain things. And if he takes more than his structure rating, he starts sinking, in which case he can't attack, doesn't move anymore, and could be removed at the end of the turn. Stricken ships can also have problems like fires breaking out or starting to become sinking as well. So it's not too bad. Okay, English activation. What are they going to do? This 4th rate I think should turn upwind. So he's going to turn to there just to get a good attack on this heavy 4th rate. Okay, that's a 4th rate. 10 Culver and Drake. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Now because he has a fired marker, he has to roll to reload before he can make his attacks. And reloading is just the same as your crew check. So he needs a 3 or higher to reload. They reload. We're hitting on 3s at this range, within 6 inches. That's not too good. And then Culver and Drake inflict damage on a 2+, so that's 3 points. Not too bad. And then we have 9 Culver and Drake. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And all these amounts of guns come from the real records of the ships. So that's kind of the historical flavor in this rule set. You see the actual guns on the ship and the names that they would have used, such as the English using Culverin, while the Dutch and French would use 18-pounder. Yeah. So Demi Culverin Drakes reloading. Need 3s to reload, and then 3s to hit. They hit, and then Demi Culverin Drake hits on a damage on a 3+. So that's 2 more. 5. And then 3 Sakers reloading. None of them reload. Okay, so we inflicted 5 points of damage on a heavy 4th rate, which is structure rating 3. 5 points of damage, structure rating 3. That's a crew casualties. So the Dutch will have a crew check there, a morale check, sorry. They have 3 structure rating, so they roll 3 dice. Now the Dutch have a 2+ crew rating, but you can see here it says 3+ for boarding actions and morale checks. So they might be better sailors, but when it comes to morale and actual fighting in hand-to-hand, they're about the same as the English. The English have a 3+ here as well. So because this is a morale check, I need 3s or higher. Okay, I succeed very well. No problem, the Dutch are happy to fight on. Okay, so the English and Dutch are both activated 1. Now it'll be the Dutch again. So I think I'm going to use this 5th rate back here, And I'm going to turn like this. That's my one sail action. And then I'm going to do a broadside, I think, against that fourth rate. And that'll be my combat action. Like this. Maybe I should attack the flagship, I'm not sure. But I suspect I might be able to get closer to him next turn. We'll see. My flagship bat here is doesn't have a lot of good targets there. This ship blocking his line of sight to this English ship. He might be able to turn and attack through there. We'll see when it comes to that. So let's have a look. Okay, my fifth rate is attacking. Excuse me. Okay, Dutch fifth rate. What has it got? Two 18-pounder Drakes. What's my range? Am I within 6 inches? Yes. So we just measure from base to base. It is within 6 inches, no problem. So two 18-pounder Drakes. I haven't fired yet. I just placed that fired marker, so I'll be hitting on 3s and damage on 2 or higher. So that's 1 point of damage. We have 7 12-pounder Drakes. 2, 4, 6, 7. Hitting on 3s and inflicting damage on 3s. So that's 3 points of damage. Takes it up to 4. And then we have 2 6-pounders. One of them hits, and it does inflict damage, so that's up to 5. Okay, English fourth rate, structure rating 3, 5 points of damage on a structure rating 3, that's 1 crew casualties. So we have a morale check for the English ship. And generally, when you first start taking casualties, it's not too much of a problem. It's when you start taking more and more casualties that the morale checks start going worse and worse. So you can see he needs to roll 3 dice. It's a structure rating 3, and needs 3s or higher, so he easily passes. But if he had 3 crew casualties, it'd be a lot different, and he wouldn't be able to attack as well. Once you start taking more casualties, the efficiency of your ship decreases until eventually, if you take the same amount of crew casualties as your structure rating, say in this case 3, you turn into a bloodbath, which means you can't attack at all, you can't do a lot of things. Basically, there's just a few guys left to steer the ship. And so crew casualties can be quite important. This first one is not a problem, but if they take another one, they'll become into heavy casualties, which causes you to attack with only half the amount of guns. Okay, so that's our Dutch activation. Now we'll do our English activation. Who's it going to be? I think if we turn this fourth rate like this, we could be able to attack that Dutch heavy fourth rate like this. That should be pretty good. We have a pretty clear field of fire there. Range is within 6 inches, so that's pretty good. Okay. So, fourth rate, once again, once you start to play a while, you end up memorizing how many guns each of these have. Especially if you're just using, see, I only have 2 different types of ship here, so it'd be pretty easy. Eventually you just say, oh yeah, fourth rate, 10 Culverin Drakes, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So he's already fired, which means he's going to have to reload first. So on reloading on 3s, and this is where the crew quality comes in. See, I rolled 3 6s there. It doesn't matter until it's a damage roll. So the English might have slightly larger ships, but they can't reload as fast, so that does help them. Okay, hits on 3s, and damage with the Culverin Drake on a 2+. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 points of damage. Some guns inflict 2 points of damage each, so if, say, if it was a larger gun like a cannon, a demi-cannon Drake or some such, which would inflict 2, it would be 2, 4, 6. That would be 8 points of damage if it was a larger gun. But these smaller Culverins, well, they're not exactly small, but they're not as large as the massive kind of 32 and 48-pound cannons. So in this case, they just inflict 1 point damage each. Okay, then we have 9 demi-Culverin Drake. 8, 6, 7, 8, 9. Reloading. You can see once you've already fired, it really reduces your efficiency. So, yeah, hits on 3s, and then damage on a 3 or higher. No damage. Wow, that's pretty poor. And 3 Sakers, reloading, hitting on 3s, damaging on 4s. So that's it. None of them actually do much damage. So 4 points of damage on our heavy 4th rate, which has a structure rating of 3. So 4 points, structure rating 3. Here's a crew casualties, not too bad. Now we can look at the damage markers page, and you'll be able to see what happens with crew casualties. This is the number of crew casualties I've taken, and this is my structure rating. So right now I'm a structure rating 3. If I take 1, I'm in light casualties, which does pretty much nothing, no effect, you can see. But if I take 2, I become heavy casualties, which means all attacks must be made at reduced strength, which means half the amount of guns. And if your attack would already be made at reduced strength due to position, say that you only have half of your broadside covering, then you wouldn't be able to attack at all. And certain things like crew checks and sail actions must be re-rolled when heavy casualties. So because he's already taken 1, he goes to 2 casualties, which takes him to heavy casualties. So I just give him a heavy casualties marker. Essentially he's taken 2 casualty markers, and so he'll need to roll a morale check, 3 dice. He needs to get at least 2 3+. He succeeds, so he's fine. He's already activated, so I'll just leave that dice next to him. Okay, now it'll be the Dutch flagship at the back there. Because he doesn't have many good targets, he's just going to do a sail action, which will be turning. He'll turn, can go 1, 2, 3 to about there. As long as he doesn't make contact, it's okay. If you do need to make contact during a turn, you can actually push ships out of the way, although your maneuver rating will be reduced by 1 if you do need to push someone out of the way. So he'll move to there. Because he doesn't have any good targets, what he's going to do is a dedicated reload. So he can, for each position that is fired, say port, starboard, bow, stern, you can roll a crew check. So only 1 position is fired, so I just roll a crew check for them. It's a 2 or higher with my crew rating, so I can remove this fired marker. So he's turned, and they've reloaded their guns, they're ready to fire a complete broadside next turn. Okay, now our last English activation, going to be this 3rd rate, the flagship. He's going to turn to here, and fire a broadside at that Dutch 5th rate. I'll give him a fired marker. And you can see how staying in line can be pretty good. It means you're not blocking each other's line of sight, whereas in this case the Dutch have had some issues. And it also means you can double up 2 ships attacking 1. Okay. So the English 3rd rate. He's got a lot of good stuff. 10 demi-cannon drakes. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. This range he'll be hitting on 3s within 6 inches. So we need 3s to hit. Not actually that good. And a demi-cannon drake inflicts damage on a 2 or higher. So each of these actually do 2 damage points because it's a demi-cannon drake. It's quite large. So it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 damage points. So I'll put a little dice there. Then what else has he got? 1 culverin drake. Hits on 3s. Damage on 2 or higher. So that's 11 points of damage total. We have 14 demi-culverin drake. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Hits on 3s. And damage on 3s. Now keep an eye out for double, triple 6s here, because we might well get it. Ooh, we were close. When you roll a lot of dice like that, you have a higher chance of setting the enemy on fire. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more points of damage. 6, 7. Okay. And then all he has left is 5 Seeker. Smaller, roughly 6-pound cannons. So 3s to hit, and 4s to inflict damage. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 more points. So that'll go up to 5. Okay, so total damage points inflicted. Sorry, these will be inflicted on this the target over here. That's turn 3, I believe. Or is it turn 2? I think it's turn 3. Yes. So your total amount of damage is 12 plus 10 is 22. So 22 points of damage on a Dutch 5th rate. You can see 19 to 22 damage points. Dutch 5th rate is structuring 3, so it's 1 crew and 2 structural damage. So 1 crew and 2 structural damage. So if he takes 1 more structural damage, he will be stricken, and be in a lot of trouble. So you can see this third rate hits very hard, and that's why it's the flagship at this particular battle. Okay, that's the end of turn 3. We remove all the dice, activation dice. Oh, the Dutch ship has a morale check, because it just took a crew casualties. So he rolls 3 dice, 1 for each point of structure rating, and needs a 3 or higher. He succeeds, no problem. Usually morale checks only start causing trouble later on in the game, once you take a lot of damage. Okay, so we're on to turn 4. Sail moves first. The Dutch go first because they have the higher crew quality. So I'm going to move this 5th rate first. I can choose which ones I'm going to move, which order I want to move things in. So let's do that. Dutch 5th rate moves 7 inches as he's currently reaching. So I go 7 inches to here, all the way over there. Then I'll do my heavy 3rd rate. He goes 6 inches to there. And then I'll do my heavy 4th rate. Now hopefully these ships don't collide. If you do move your sail move and make contact with another ship, and not just make contact but move further, like overlapping, then you could have a collision and it could be a lot of trouble. So heavy 4th rate is also reaching, so he's going to go 6 inches as well to there. You can see the ships don't quite collide. If they did, I could possibly spill sail with this ship. In fact, I might try to do that now, just to give me a bit more of a... let's see. He's probably going to turn there and attack the flagship. Or he could turn up here and really demolish that guy. Either way, I think this heavy 4th rate's probably going to have a clear field of fire, so I won't worry about that yet. So, English sail moves. This 4th rate here is actually in irons, due to being due to the sail damage. So we place an in irons marker, one of these guys, and he only moves a quarter of his movement, which in this case I believe is 1 inch. This 5th rate here, 4th rate is reaching, so we'll go his full movement, which is 6 inches. Goes to there, kind of taking him out of the fight for a little bit. And the 3rd rate is still close hold, so we're moving 2 inches of his 4-inch speed. Okay, so you can see the situation changes quite a lot based on the sail moves. We now have these two ships kind of isolated. This ship's certainly out of the fight for a bit, as he can't really turn. He couldn't really. I don't think he'd really be able to make an effective attack from back there. Whereas all 3 of these ships can focus on the 3rd rate if they can do their turns correctly. So now we roll for activation. All these ships are still fightable, so they're not either in bloodbaths or dismasted or any of those kind of conditions. Sorry, not dismasted. Unfightable could be surrendered, stricken, sinking, out of control, or in a bloodbath, or engaged in boarding action. So they're still all fightable. So we'll roll 3 dice. We're all within 12 inches of the flagship, but it doesn't matter because when you need 2 or higher, it doesn't matter so much. So all the English ships are still in range of the flagship. They'll roll for activation as well. One of them fails, but you can re-roll. So they all activate. Very good. Okay, it's turn 4. The Dutch are going to take the first activation. And I think they're going to attack with this heavy 4th rate. They'll turn to here and do a point-blank pistol shot broadside against that 3rd rate, because it's giving them a lot of trouble. We didn't realize how heavily armed that thing was, so we really think that's our new priority, is to try and take this thing down. Even though we're focusing fire, we should have looked at damaging these guys a bit more. Now we have an opportunity to focus all our guns on it, hopefully, depending on if I can get this 4th rate into a good clean line of sight. But let's just go for it right now and see what happens. So heavy 3rd rate, doing a pistol shot range broadside. So I'm within 1 inch. That's considered pistol shot range, 25 yards. Okay, let's do this. Heavy 3rd rate. Heavy 3rd rate. 12 18-pounder drakes. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Hitting on 2s at this range. Okay, pretty good, pretty good. 3rd rate, and then 18-pounder drakes. I need a 2 or higher, and I'm hoping to set them on fire. Oh, didn't quite do it. Only 2 6s, not 3. Still good though. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points of damage. I'll track that there. Heavy third rate, 12, 1200 rakes. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. I don't think I'd fired yet with this. Or did I already fire? Was that? I may have to reload with these. I'm not sure if that fired marker was there when I started the salvo. I'll just assume it wasn't. Although I'll check on the camera and probably I'll need to reload these. It shouldn't matter too much though, as my reloads are on a 2+. It shouldn't really matter so much. Okay, heading on 2s at this range. These are our 1200 drakes. Inflicting damage on a 3+. So not too bad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more points of damage. 6, 7, 8. And then we also have 6 6-pounders. Heading on 2s. And damaging on 4s. Oopsie. So that's 1 more point. Step 3. And we also have 2 3-pounders. They both hit, but neither inflicts damage. Okay, so we've done 12, 16 points of damage there on the heavy, on the third rate, English third rate. So 16 points of damage. 1 crew, 1 structural, as he's structure rating 4. So not too bad. 1 crew casualties, 1 structural damage. So he has a crew, a morale check straight away. He has to roll at least 1 3+, which he does. And that is that. Now we'll do the English activation. Okay, what are the English going to do? I think we might just return fire against that third rate at point pistol shot range. So I'll turn this way, like this. That'll prevent it, hopefully prevent a collision next turn as well. Although we'll see. Might end up colliding with each other, that's fine. And we'll do a point blank or pistol shot range broadside back. This time I'm definitely reloading. I can see that I've already have the fired marker there, so got to reload first. Third rate, 10 demi-cannon drakes. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. These ones hit very hard. So reloading first on a 3+. Got to reload. Doing pretty well. Heading on 2s. And inflict damage on 2s. No 666s, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 points of damage straight away, straight off the bat. Then we have a Culverin Drake, reloads, doesn't reload. We then have 14 Demi-Culverin Drake, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Reloading on 3s. Heading on 2s at this range. Wish that was my damage roll, look at all those 6s. And damages on 3s. So 3 more points of damage. So up to 15. And then we have 5 Seeker. Why have used 5 Seeker me? So reloads. Hits, all hit. And 4s to inflict damage. So 1 more point of damage. Okay, so that's 16 points of damage on a heavy third rate, which is structure rating 4. So 16, structure rating 4, 1 crew, 1 structural. So he hasn't taken either of those yet, so it's not bad. 1 crew, 1 structural damage. So I've got a morale check. I succeed pretty easily. You can see neither of these ships is really taking much damage at the start of this turn, so it's kind of evening out. Neither side's being able to focus fire too well on a single ship. Next up it'll be the Dutch. Although here we go, they might be able to do something pretty fun here. We'll activate this 5th rate down here, and we're going to do a turn to about there, and that looks to me like a stern raking shot. Let's have a look. In order to get a raking broadside, or a raking attack, I need to be at least half within the target's stern or bow chaser field of fire. So you can see here that's the field of fire. That's about halfway. And you can see I'm definitely within that halfway. My base is inside at least half of that. Now if we look at my field of fire, the target is less than half covered by my field of fire. So it's only going to be reduced strength. That means I can only attack with half my guns, but the ones that do attack will be stern raking. And I wonder if I can position that slightly better. See if I can turn back slightly. I don't think I'm quite going to get a full broadside in there. Let's see. No, I don't think I can quite do it, because no matter where I turn, it's going to be... I'll just turn to about there. No matter where I turn, I'm not quite going to be able to cover half of my base with him. Okay, so he's already fired. I'm going to have to reload. Within 6... Oh, I'm just beyond 6 inches, so it's not going to be that good. So, 5th rate. Dutch 5th rate, let's have a look. What kind of guns has he got? 5th rate. 2 18-pounder Drakes. Now, because it's reduced strength, I only have 1 of them. So I'll just fire 1. So I need a 3 or higher to reload, 2 or higher to reload, which I do. Then I need a 4 or higher to hit. I do hit. And I need a 2 or higher to damage. I inflict damage. Now usually an 18-pounder would do 1 point of damage, but because we're stern raking, it becomes 2 points of damage. If we were bow raking, we'd get to re-roll failed damage rolls, but we wouldn't get a bonus to damage. So bow raking is good, but stern raking is the best, because you don't have much defense back there, just like glass cabins and great cabin, that kind of thing. Okay, what else we got? 5th rate, 7 12-pounder Drakes. So that would be halved down to 3 as we round down. Reloads on 2s, hits on 4s, and damage on 3+. It's another one which causes 4 points, 2 more points, because it's double the damage points. And 2 6-pounders. So you can see, even with just a few guns, you can do well from a stern rake. So I also have 2 6-pounders, which becomes 1 6-pounder for reduced strength. It hits, it reloads, sorry. It does hit, and damage on a 4+. Oh, not quite. It's still pretty good though. We inflict 4 points of damage on a structure rating 4, which is enough to cause a crew casualties, which is pretty good. So structure rating 4, he doesn't care about the second crew casualties, but once he takes 3, he'll become heavy casualties, as you can see on our damage markers table. Structure rating 4, light casualties, with 1 crew casualty marker. 2, still light casualties, doesn't care. Once he gets to 3, it's heavy casualties. And then if he gets to 4, it's a bloodbath, so that's what he's got to worry about. Right now he's on 2, which is fine. No effect for light casualties. He does have to make a morale check though, so 4 dice. He gets 2 successes, 2 succeeded crew checks, which is equal to the number of crew casualty markers, which means he does pass the morale check. No worries. Okay, that's our Dutch activation. Now we're going to do another English activation. This ship here is in irons, which means he can still turn and do the normal things he wants to do, but if he ends the turn in irons, he'll have to make a crew check, and could potentially get sail damage or lose control of the ship if he fails that crew check. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn upwind. We are a 4th rate, so I do have 2 maneuver rating, which is okay. I might have to just take a turn in the in irons. So I go 1, 2, just turning to there. I still end the turn in irons, so I need to make a crew check, which I succeed. So I don't have to worry about that. Nothing happens essentially, but next turn, because I start the turn in irons, I won't be moving at all, and I'll need to make another crew check at the start of next turn in order to retain control of the ship. As ships tack through the wind, they always did kind of stop completely. So you'll see next turn he won't move at all, and that is something that did happen. As they turn into the wind, they'd stop, and then they'd reset their sails and start turning the other way. Okay, can he make an attack while he's at it? Let's see. Often in this game you have a choice of lining up a good attack or sailing the ship. It's hard to do both at the same time. So right now I've tried to sail out of that being in irons as far as possible, but it means that I only have a very limited things I can attack there. So if I wanted to attack that Dutch ship, I'd only be able to attack at reduced strength. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to do a dedicated reload and just try to reload all those guns. I succeed, and that way I'll be ready for next time those guns are needed. So that's my English activation. Now for another Dutch activation, the last Dutch ship. I have this heavy 4th rate who's taken heavy casualties, so not too good there. He's going to turn. We'll turn to here. 1 point, 2 points of maneuver rating. and I'll hope to stern rake that English ship as I go past. That's my plan. And I'll do a dedicated reload. I succeed. Yep. So usually heavy casualties, you have to reload, you have to re-roll successful crew checks, but that's only for sail actions or grappling. So it doesn't matter for reloading. You can still reload as normal when you have heavy casualties, like this ship does. So he's reloaded. Okay, now the English have one more activation. They're going to activate this 4th rate, and if he stayed where he is, he's going to go off the table, and that would indicate that the captain has disengaged and left the battle, and any damage done to him would be ignored at the end of the game, unless he's on fire, in which case you have to resolve the fire before the end of the game results. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try and turn back into the fight here. 4th rate, I've got 2 maneuver ratings, so I can go 1, 2, and that should keep me in the game just for a bit. I think it'll still be useful. And I'll try to do a dedicated reload. Yep, I succeed, so I reloaded those guns. And often that's what happens in these games. You go close, do a few shots, and then try and pull away and reload. And come back with a full broadside. Okay, so that's the end of turn 5, I believe. Well, it's the end of the activation phase. Now I can remove all these activation dice or markers, whichever you want to use. So now we're going to do the boarding action phase. Because these two ships are within 1 inch of each other, either of them can choose to engage in boarding. It's actually the 2 flagships, so that could be interesting. The Dutch have taken less crew casualties, heavy 3rd rate. Both ships are structure rating 4 and have pretty similar attributes when it comes to fighting and boarding action. But the Dutch have a slight advantage in that the English have taken more crew casualties. So the Dutch are going to try to initiate a boarding action. All they need to do is roll a successful crew check, which they do. Now the English can try and prevent that boarding action by rolling a crew check themselves, which they do. So the Dutch aren't able to board, but because we're not boarded, after the boarding action phase we have the sinking and anti-personnel phase. So we don't have any sinking ships, but anti-personnel fire, if we're within 1 inch, we can conduct anti-personnel fire. So each ship has an anti-personnel rating. Heavy 3rd rate, the English 3rd rate, you can see has AP 4 there. AP, anti-personnel rating 4. And the Dutch ship has exactly the same rating. So what you usually do, this all happens simultaneously, by the way. So both ships will roll their the amount of anti-personnel fire. So it's 1 dice for each point of anti-personnel rating. And then you subtract any crew casualties you have. So the Dutch have taken 1 crew casualty, the English have taken 2 crew casualties. So they roll the dice, and if they get a 6, they'll inflict the crew casualties on the enemy. So the English small arms fire doesn't do anything, the Dutch does. So the Dutch actually cause heavy casualties. So they inflict another crew casualty marker on the English through musket fire or small range, short range swivel guns on the decks, such as the Steen stuck in stone throwers, small guns. So no matter how many 6s you roll, you can only ever inflict 1 point of crew casualties during anti-personnel fire. So even if I'd rolled 3 6s, it will only inflict 1 crew casualties marker. So, but in this case, it's taken him to heavy casualties, which is pretty good for the Dutch. So you can see it's progressing fairly evenly. We have 2 ships with heavy casualties, a few casualties dotted around. So now, because the English have taken heavy casualties marker, they've got to make a morale check immediately. So 1 dice for each point of structure rating, that's 4. They need to get at least 3 successful crew checks, which they do. Often the Dutch and English are happy to just fight it out all day. They did have a battle that lasted for 4 days, so you can imagine they're made of pretty strong stuff when it comes to morale. Okay. If he had failed, they would then roll on the morale failure table to see what actually happens, whether he surrenders or whether the crew just becomes wavering and are more likely to surrender in future, or whether there's no real effect. Okay, so now we'll be on to turn 6. We'll do our sail moves, starting with the Dutch. The Dutch can choose which ones they want to do first. For the purpose of this game, I'm just going to say this 5th rate goes off the table, because as you can see in the camera, it will move off the table there. So He moves away off the table. You can see that the damage taken by this 5th rate. Let's have a look at this. Got a few markers on him. The damage taken, it's not quite enough to count at the end of the game. He's taken 1 sail damage, 2 structural, and 1 crew casualties. So all these kind of things can be repaired at port. You can get new men. All these things are kind of minimal. If he had taken more significant damage, it still wouldn't count if he left the table. So usually if you take enough damage that you can't leave the table, that's when things start going badly. If you were dismasted, or starting to sink, or stricken, or had a bloodbath. Even if you had a bloodbath and left the table, like complete full crew casualties, you can still find more men at port. As long as you can make it home, it's okay. So leaving the table is a fairly valid tactic to prevent damage. So he's left the game, and the English will get no victory points for all the damage they inflicted on him. Okay, so other sailing moves. I've got my heavy 4th rate here. He is running, and so he'll be going, heavy 4th rate usually goes 6 3/4, he'll just go 4, which puts him in a pretty ideal position for a stern rake there. I mean, that is beautiful. Meanwhile, the Dutch heavy 3rd rate up ahead, the flagship Dutch ship is reaching, so he'll be going 6 inches to here, which is quite a distance. And I think he might get... Oh, he won't quite be a collision, because I know this English 3rd rate moves very slowly. So the English, he is currently close hold, so he goes 2 inches. So he's actually been pretty outmaneuvered by those Dutch. They easily keep in front of him. And this is down to the player, this kind of stuff. If you put your ships in a good position and know your speeds well, know the enemy speeds, where they'll be, you can generally sail pretty well. This is down to the player skill, this kind of stuff. Not so much the skill of the actual crews involved. The crews will do things like reloading for you, managing things like sails, that kind of thing. But the actual sailing is all down to the player. So this game is quite important. The tactics are quite important, and they can decide a battle, and often do decide a battle more so than the size of the ships or the amount of guns, that kind of thing. While those things do help, generally it's the tactics that will decide a battle. Okay, the other English ships. This ship here is still in irons. So because he starts the turn in irons, he needs to immediately make a crew check, which he succeeds. So because he succeeds, he just doesn't move. He doesn't move at all. So yeah, I can just double check these rules. If you start the sailing phase in irons, make a crew check. Crew check is successful. The ship can rotate on the spot up to 45 degrees. So in order to rotate on the spot, you can see we have these, I'll use this Dutch ship here for example purposes. Say I've got a ship and I want to rotate on the spot. I'll put this right underneath, or right next to it, and I'll line the bow up with one of these points, and then each one of these points is 45 degrees away from the other. So in order to pivot on the spot, I could just go to there, and that would take me in line with that one. That's a 45 degree pivot from there to there. So that's all I need to do. I can pivot here, and I could potentially line up a attack against that heavy 3rd rate, which is what I'll do. So I pivot like that. I'm just going to go to there. Any further, and I will not be able to fire completely that Dutch 3rd rate. I'm still in irons, I think, because of my sail damage. Let's have a look. Am I still in irons? Yes, but that's okay. I think my crew can hold it there as I try and pivot around. And that could be done with getting out the longboats, or just using your sails and rudder to try and position the ship around without actually making any forward movement. Meanwhile, our other 4th rate over there is now in irons because he's directly heading into the wind. As you can see, when I place it, he's in irons like that. And he is going to move 1 inch, just because he moves 1/4 speed. Okay, now activation. The Dutch have 2 ships, so we roll 2 dice. Wow, they're both a 1. The Dutch get 1 reroll, so 1 ship activates. And now the English get 3. All the ships are still fightable. So they do get 3. They need 3s, and they all activate. Dutch get to go first, so they better make this a good one. Now the question is, do they want to activate the 4th rate with heavy casualties to stern rake the flagship? Or do they want to try and activate this guy who has less less casualties, but not quite in as good a position? He could still cause trouble there and do stern raking against this stern chasers against the front of that ship. I think I'm going to take the stern raking with this heavy 4th rate. So he hasn't fired yet, so I'll put down a fired marker. I'm just going to change the batteries on my camera very quickly, so then we'll do that. Okay, we're back in action. I'm just about to do the stern raking with this heavy 4th rate, so I'll put down the fired marker, and let's do this. Okay, Dutch, heavy 4th rate. Because he's taken heavy casualties, this salvo will be at reduced strength. So we have 4 18-pounder drakes become 2 18-pounder drakes, hitting on 3s at this range. Wow, neither of them hit. That is terrible. Then we have 3 12-pounder drakes, hitting on 3s as well, and damage on 3s. They both inflict damage, which becomes 4. Usually it's 1 each, but because it's stern raking, it's 2 each. It adds 1 point of damage for each of the guns. And 7 6-pounders becomes 3 6-pounders. 2 of them hit, and damage on 4s. 1 more, it becomes 6 points of damage. So, what does that mean for our English flagship? 6 points of damage on a structure rating 4 is another crew casualties. So that takes the English ship into a bloodbath. He's now taken 4 crew casualty markers. He was at 3 on heavy casualties, but now he's on 4, which takes him into a bloodbath. Now let me read out what bloodbath does. It's not fun. So here we go. So he's taken 4 crew casualties, structuring 4, bloodbath. The ship can no longer make attack actions or conduct or fight off grappling. Blood drips from the gun ports and the crew is considered to be massacred. The ship can only turn, warp, or drop, raise, or cut anchor. All successful crew checks and sail actions must be re-rolled. So he can't make any attacks anymore. That's the big takeaway. It's just not good. And he has a morale check. 4 dice, and he needs to make 4. He needs to succeed 4 of them. 3 or higher. Wow, he does. He actually succeeds. That's incredible. Good work. Okay, so that's our Dutch activation. Now we have English. We will attack with this 4th rate, I believe it is. Yep, 4th rate. We'll do a broadside against Dutch heavy 3rd rate. Okay, put the fired marker down, and then 4th rate. 10 Culver and Drake. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Heading on 3s. And damage on 3s. So we've got 3 6s, which means the Dutch ship is on fire. So you can put some smoke on it, or any kind of fire marker you want. I tend to just use like cotton wool with lots of fire on it. Painted cotton wool. Or also fire markers are provided at the end of the rules. You can print out these little guys. Okay, so that's pretty good. Also, we'll count up the damage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because it needs a 3 or higher. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 points of damage. And then we have 9 Demi-Culver and Drake. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Heading on 3s. And damaging on 3s as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4 more. And finally 3 Sakers. They all hit. I need 4s to inflict damage, so none of them inflict damage. So 9 points of damage in total. It's a heavy 3rd rate, which has 4 structure rating. So 9 points of damage on structure rating 4 is 1 sail damage. So he's already taken 1 sail damage, now he's taken 2 sail damage. So I have a little sail damage 2 marker there, you can see it has a 2 in the sail. So I'll replace the 1 sail with the 2 sail. And from now on he can only move at half speed. He's still unwieldy, he can only move at half speed, and he loses 1 point of maneuver rating. Once you take 3 sail damage, you consider it to be dismasted, and you can't move at all, you're dead in the water. So that's a pretty good from the English ship there. Now the Dutch don't have any more activation, but they can still do a sail action. Now when you're on fire, you can either choose, before you activate, you can choose to fight the fire, which means you won't be doing any activation, or you can activate as normal and just let the fire burn, which brings with it a possibility of exploding, which isn't great. So the Dutch are going to elect to fight the fire. So what we do is we roll on the fire table. We have a quick reference sheet here which has pretty much everything you need to know. And here we have a fire table at the bottom. So we just roll a d6 to see what happens. And if I'm -1 to this roll, if I'm fighting the fire. So you can see if I roll a 6, I explode, and I'm pretty much, the ship's destroyed. But if I fight the fire, there's no chance of that happening. So I'm just going to roll dice, and because I'm fighting it, I get a -1 to this roll. So 4 becomes a 3, which is 1 crew casualties. So I'm a heavy 3rd rate. I'm okay. I take 1 crew casualties, but it's not good. It doesn't put me into a heavy casualties yet, but I do need to make a morale check, which I pass. Okay, so that's the Dutch activation. They've activated this guy. We say activation, but he hasn't actually done anything. All he can do is try to fight the fire at this stage, so that's okay. And the next English activation, we'll activate this one. He's going to turn upwind like this and fire at the Dutch ship that is already on fire, because why not? Okay, on the 4th rate, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 demi-culverin drakes. 3s to hit at this range, and 2s to inflict damage with a demi-culverin drake, I believe. Sorry, 3s. 4th rate. Oh no, sorry, they're culverin drakes, so yes it is 2. So that's 4 points of damage. And then we have 9 demi-culverin drakes. 8, 9. To hit on 3s at this range. So within 6 inches. And 3s to inflict damage. So that's 4 more points of damage. And finally, 3 Seeker. 3s to hit. And 4s to inflict damage. Great. So we inflict 9 points of damage. 9 points of damage. Structure rating 4 is 1 sail damage. So the Dutch ship is completely dismasted. Put it 3. The damage marker. Sail damage with a little 3 in the sail there, you can see. My camera will cooperate. So we'll put it on there. He's completely dismasted, so he won't be moving at all in the sail phase. Great. Now both of these English ships have activated. We can activate with the ship in the bloodbath, although there's not too much he can do. He can try to make a sail action to get out of there. What are we going to do with that English ship, the flagship? It's not very good. It's quite a large ship, so I don't think he'll be able to... He can try and push his way out of there and get out. Let's see. 3rd rate. He's got 2 maneuver rating. So when he tries to turn, you can see this Dutch ship's in the way. So he can just try and push him out of the way. What's called a grating turn is when you push, you make a turn as normal, and the enemy ship has to move the minimum distance to get out of the way. When you do this, you lose 1 maneuver rating. So this English ship has a maneuver rating 2, usually, but I'll only have a maneuver rating of 1. So I can turn to about here, and I push him out of the way, just the minimum distance, but I can only move to 1 because of that's happened. So that's about as much as I could do, and that'll hopefully get me on a course to, if I can get my flagship out of there, off the table, then the bloodbath won't matter as to end of the game conditions. Okay. So that's the end of the activation phase. We're going to move all this, the activation markers. I believe that Dutch ship certainly has a morale check that I forgot to make due to the crew casualties inflicted by fire. So we'll make that. He succeeds. He's taken 2 crew casualties, and he's got 2 checks, so he's fine with that. You can see he's kind of getting ganged up here by those 2, so it's not great. So, sinking and boarding action phase. I could actually try to board this English ship here because we're so close. The English ship and the bloodbath, because they have a bloodbath, they can't conduct or fight off grappling. Bloodbath. Oh, where is that bloodbath? Here we go. They cannot conduct or fight off grappling. So the Dutch ship could grapple. I'm pretty sure they can still do that even when they're on fire. See, there's some guys fighting the fire and some guys not. So, yep, we'll try to do that. Now, you probably can't see this on the camera, but we're not quite in base contact. There's a slight gap between it. I think the English ship pushed it out of the way and then moved slightly further. So the Dutch will need to succeed a crew check in order to actually grapple properly. They do. So the English ship is, it just moves the minimum distance to become in base contact like that. And they are considered to be tethered together now. Okay. Alright. Now we do a boarding action. So, in order to do a boarding action, we take the structure rating of the ship. Both of these have structure rating 4, like so. And then we add the anti-personnel rating to that. So in this case, I think they're both 4 as well. Let me have a look. It is a 3rd rate. Heavy 3rd rate, is it? Yes, heavy 3rd rate. Heavy 3rd rate. Structure rating 4, anti-personnel 4. So that's structure rating 4, anti-personnel 4. The British ship is exactly the same. Structure rating 4, anti-personnel 4. And then what we do is we subtract 1 dice for each crew casualties. So the British ship, English ship loses 4 due to having a 4 crew casualty marker, while the Dutch lose 2. And this is what we have. So we both roll these at the same time. It's like an opposed check. Each one of these is going to be a crew check. So we'll see who has the most successful crew checks. Okay, so the English have 3 successful crew checks. The Dutch have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 successful crew checks. So they're considered to be winning the boarding action. That's something I remembered. We actually didn't need to roll that because if the other ship in contact in a boarding action has a bloodbath, they automatically surrender if they're boarded. So yep. So we didn't roll this, but it's good to show you how the boarding action works. What would usually happen is you'd roll these dice, and then if I get more than, in fact, I get double the amount of. If I get more, I inflict a crew casualties. If I get double or more the successful crew checks, I win the boarding action, and the enemy target ship is considered to surrender straight away. So either way, whether it's through this doubling the amount of successful crew checks, or whether all the enemy ships are in a bloodbath, they surrender straight away. So I'll give them a surrendered marker. They surrender, and now at the end of the boarding action phase, I can transfer crew. So I can transfer a prize crew. So let me get some of the right markers for it. So what I do, when you win a boarding action, you could either transfer crew or you could choose to disengage immediately You can't do both, so in this case I'm just going to transfer crew, because that means I would have captured the English flagship, which is pretty good. Pretty good. Where are my prize crew markers? Gotta be here somewhere. Prize crew. Prize crew, prize crew. Where is it? And sometimes you can just write on the back of a marker if you can't find one. Okay, prize crew. We'll put a prize crew marker on the captured English ship. And when you transfer a prize crew, you put a crew away marker. This essentially counts as a crew casualties marker for all purposes, except for victory points at the end of the game. So I put a crew away marker on this this ship, and that means that he's actually, instead of taking 2 crew casualty markers, he's now taken 3, including the crew away marker, which means he'll be in heavy casualties if he tries to make attacks or anything. But at the end of the game, he won't count as heavy casualties for victory points, because it's just, all he's done is transfer the crew over, maybe about 50 men, or maybe even 100 to capture this English ship. Okay, so that's the end of turn 7, I believe. Now we'll go into turn 8. The game's pretty much over. We'll probably call this pretty shortly. So firstly we have sail actions. This heavy 4th rate, Dutch heavy 4th rate is running. I believe he goes off the table. He'll go 6 inches. So he goes off the table and is removed. Just because I'm going to keep this game very simple. And along a larger table, you have much more space to move around, but just in this small game, he's taken heavy casualties, but because he's left the table, that is ignored at the end of the game. Because he's able to get back to port and replace any missing men. Yeah. So, other Dutch movement, let's see. These 2 ships are tethered together, so they don't actually move at all in the sailing phase. In real life, they drift slightly away from the wind, but we don't model that in War by Sail, so they simply stay where they are. Now we do the English sail moves. The ship here starts the turn in irons, so he needs to make a crew check, which he fails. So I believe he becomes out of control immediately. Let me have a look. Yep, becomes out of control. So the crew have tried to take advantage of the slow movement to make attacks while it being in irons, but they paid for it by losing control of the ship. If I can find an out of control marker, which I do have, so they're out of control. And now they drift 2 inches away from the wind direction every turn, just like this. And they'll have to try to regain control at the start of each sail phase. This ship here also starts the turn in irons, so he needs to make a crew check as well. He's okay, so he can warp if he wants to, which is probably his only option there. So he can not warp, sorry, pivot on the spot, but it's essentially the same as warping. So he pivots on the spot, 45 degrees. If he can keep pivoting, he should hopefully be able to move away. Okay, activation. Neither of these ships generate activation because they're tethered. But these 2 ships, this one's out of control, so he doesn't generate activation, but this one does. The one English ship, so we roll for him. He does activate. So we don't need to worry about that. Also, at the end of the... Let's see, at the end of the action phase last turn, the fire could possibly spread. So I probably should have checked for that. And what we do is we just put the wind and turn aid over the center of the ship, and we draw a line from there to the enemy. Any ships downwind could spread. The fire could spread on a 4+ or so, depending on the direction. Now, at the end of the activation phase last turn, this ship wasn't quite in base contact. He was just out of base contact. So if I just look at the fire page, fire spreading. If the so you draw a line from the ship's mainmast to the other mainmast. If this line intersects with the reaching section, fire will only spread to ships that are in base contact. So it wouldn't spread to him, and would only spread on a 4+. But if it was running, it would spread up to 1 inch away. So he wouldn't quite be, the fire wouldn't spread, so that's fine, we don't have to worry about that. So the Dutch get to activate first, because they can only do sail action. they're pretty much just going to roll for the fire. So you always roll for the fire during your activation. They'll be fighting the fire, so I just roll. Okay, so I rolled a 1 on the fire table, which means the fire's been put out. So they're able to put out the fire. So it's looking pretty good for the Dutch right now. They've put out their fire, they've captured the English flagship. The other English ship's out of control. So now the English get to activate 1 ship. Out of control ships, I don't think they can make any attacks. They can only make sail actions. Let's have a look. What can they do if they're out of control? A while since I had an out of control. Okay. Ships that are out of control cannot make sail actions during the activation phase. So we could still attack, but just can't turn or anything. What I'll do is I can choose to activate either of these. I could activate this out of control ship just to fire. It'll be a reduced strength broadside, or will it? Oh, it's borderline reduced strength. I might as well do that. Because it's so close, it's hard to tell. I would say on a 4+, it's reduced strength. So it is reduced strength. So he may be out of control, but he can still fire his guns as he drifts downwind past them at that Dutch ship. Doesn't matter that these ships are tethered together, you can still fire at them as long as you have line of sight, clear line of sight to them. Okay, so it's a 4th rate. I have 10 Culverin Drakes, but it becomes 5 for reduced strength. I need to reload on 3s. I'm within 1 inch, so 2s to hit. Wow, that's bad. And 2s to damage. So that's 2 points of damage so far. And I have 9 Culverin Drakes, Demi-Culverin Drakes, which becomes 4 for reduced strength. Reloads on 3s, hits on 2s, and damage on 3s. So, and then 1 Seeker that doesn't reload. So we only have 2 points of damage. I don't think that's not quite enough to actually inflict any damage on the Dutch ship. Let's see, 2 damage points against strike rating 4. Not quite enough. Okay. So that's all the activation. Let's see. Because the ship started the turn in irons, already done that, so we're on activation phase. It's the end of the activation phase. That's done. We do have anti-personnel fire we could do, so we're going to do that. This ship could choose to grapple with that ship. Oh no, because it's out of control. I don't think it can do that. So we'll do anti-personnel fire. You can only do anti-personnel fire if all the enemy ships are captured and the boarding action is over. Then you can do it with any ships you want. So I would usually have 4 anti-personnel rating, but because I have 2 crew casualties and 1 crew away, I actually only have 1. So I need to roll 1 dice. I don't do anything. The 4th rate, which will do anti-personnel fire as it goes past. The English 4th rate has a anti-personnel rating of 2. Because it's taking 1 crew casualties, it's only 1. So it's neither side is able to inflict significant casualties through small arms fire. Okay, so now we'll do the boarding and anti-personnel phase. So we should have done our boarding actions first, but that's fine. So because we've won the boarding action, and at the end of the boarding action phase, we can disengage. So all our ships can move up to 2 inches away, and I believe pivot up to 90 degrees. What I'll do is I'll just find my boarding action sheet so we can make sure we're doing this correctly. Grappling. Okay, here we go. Boarding actions. So if one side is 1, you can disengage. Disengage all the ships up to 2 inches away and pivot on the spot up to 90 degrees. So I can move this one up to 2 inches to there. And this one can move up to 2 inches as well. And I can pivot up to 90 degrees. So I can move this one to here. And this one to here. He's actually dismasted. So I can still technically do this, but I won't be able to take advantage of it next turn. This is all done with like rowboats or that kind of such like. or pushing each other away with kind of sticks or some such. So that's about as much as we can do on turn 8. It'll be up to turn 9. Yeah, there's nothing else much going on. So this captured English ship, the captured English flagship, which is now under Dutch control, will sail on as normal. He doesn't count as being in a bloodbath anymore. He counts as being in heavy casualties due to this prize crew being in there. So he just sails off the table. And the Dutch can claim that they own him at the end of the turn. So any damage like bloodbath and stuff will be ignored. But the ship does kind of capture at the end of the game. So what I'll do is I'll just end the game there. This Dutch ship doesn't move at all. During this, so the sailing action, he's taken 3 sail damage, so he's not going to move. This ship is still out of control, so I need to make a. So I'm able to succeed my crew check for being out of control. I'm still in irons, but I can pivot on the spot to there, which might be okay. But it means I can't shoot at him. This one here needs to make a crew check, which he fails. So he also becomes out of control and starts drifting away. So you can see that probably by the end of the game, neither of these ships are really going to do too much damage against that Dutch ship. Meanwhile, the Dutch ship is probably going to broadside them, so any damage inflicted on this Dutch ship will probably be equaled by damage done on these English ships. So I'm just going to call the game there, and we'll work out the victory points, and you can see how that works. Ending the game and results. So what do the Dutch have? We'll start with just one side at a time to work out their victory points. So the Dutch have captured the English flagship. I think that's the most important thing we have to worry about there. So you can see here we get a number of points for various conditions. Captured is 4 points, and then we multiply that by the structure rating of the ship that you captured, or that the damage condition applies to. So it's captured a third rate, which is structure rating 4. So that's 4 times 4 is 16 for the Dutch. English, on the other hand, because the 2 Dutch ships that left the table, they're not going to get any victory points for any damage inflicted on those. But what we do have is we have a Dutch ship here which is dismasted. So he is considered to be dead in the water, which gives you 1 point. He's structure rating 4, so that becomes 4 points. So the Dutch have 16, the English have 4 points of victory points. The difference is 12 points. So you can see, you compare the difference. It's between 10 and 12, so it's a decisive victory for the Dutch and a decisive defeat for the English, which seems about right. We have the English totally flubbering their moves and going out of control, while the Dutch sail away with their flagship. It's pretty much the definition of a decisive victory. Cool, I hope you enjoyed. I hope that helps you get your own games going and see what you think about the War by Sail system. Obviously it covers many different periods. You can do anything from 1550s, say Northern 7 Years' War or the Spanish Armada, all the way up through the Napoleonic era to the War of 1812, with lots of interesting little conflicts like the Russo-Turkish War, Russo-Swedish War, and little battles like that, little conflicts like that dotted through. Great, hope you enjoyed. Until next time.